with BYU on Sports Illustrated. I'm Casey Lundquist. Super excited to talk to Grant Cohn of all 49ers. Grant covers everything there is to know about the 49ers, and I wanted to catch up with him and talk about Fred Warner, former BYU great. So Grant, first of all, thanks for your time. Thanks for hopping on, and how are you doing today?
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Fred Warner just spoke to the 49ers beat reporters about 2 hours ago. So this is great timing, and there's a lot of fresh stuff to talk about. Let's get into it.
Awesome. So first of all, I want to go back to the 2018 NFL draft. What was the general perception of 49ers fans when Fred Warner was selected?
Well, he was a third-round pick, and the year before, the 49ers had drafted Reuben Foster in the first round. So at that time, 49ers fans were still focused on Foster and believed that he was going to be the heir apparent in the organization to Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman. There's been some great inside linebackers, and everyone was focused on Foster. He was the one who came in with the pedigree from the SEC, playing in big games that everyone had seen on television. Fred Warner was a third-round pick for BYU. A lot of people don't see him on television. A lot of people didn't know who he was. So I think Niner fans were intrigued. They looked at his athletic profile and saw, well, there might be something here. But I think at the time, people were still solely focused on Foster and maybe thought Warner would be a complementary piece or a backup.
And now here we are a couple of years later. Obviously, Fred Warner was named to the NFL Top 100. What do 49ers fans think now of Fred Warner with 2 years of hindsight?
Now I think they look at him as one of the emerging stars on the team. He's only been on the team 2 years, but I think he's almost following the George Kittle trajectory. Kittle was good as a rookie. He was great his second year, and he improved again his third year. And just looking at Warner today, he looks like he's in even better shape than he was last year. He looks like he has Kittle's work ethic in the weight room, and I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes an all-pro next year. Remember, he's not just an excellent tackler or excellent in coverage. He gets the ball from the offense, and he intercepted Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. If the Niners had won, that would be a legendary play in 49ers franchise history. We've almost forgotten about it, but he came to play in that Super Bowl and was one of the playmakers on the field for either side.
And looking forward to this upcoming season, what are your expectations for Fred Warner?
Certainly. Well, we just asked him, what do you think about being ranked 70th in the NFL Top 100? Because I think most people feel like that's a fair rating for a second-year guy. And he said, I was disappointed. I felt I'd played better. I think I'm better than that. And I actually liked hearing that because I expect him to have that mentality. He's the leader of the best defense in the league, and he is emerging. And he certainly could become one of the best players regardless of position. So I think most people expect, now that DeForest Buckner's gone, he's on the Colts, Fred Warner to take ownership of the defense, to get better and to be a top 50 or top 40 player in the NFL after next season.
And you mentioned his leadership specifically. Maybe those things that he brings off the field, what impact has he made in the locker room and as a general of the 49ers defense?
He relates so well to all the players and the coaches. When you talk to him, he can be a little vague and bland, but not in a rude way, in a coaching, like a coach. Like he's as protective of the game plan as the defensive coordinator, Robert Saleh, is. And Robert Saleh might be the smartest coach I've ever covered. I mean, he's extremely bright. And to me, Fred Warner is the player extension of Robert Saleh. When you talk to Fred Warner, it's almost like you're talking to Saleh. He's that smart. So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that Reuben Foster didn't have. And it doesn't really matter comparing those two because Foster's in Washington now. But just it stuck out how mature Fred Warner is, how seasoned, how polished. I mean, everything that Reuben Foster wasn't. And that's why you need a base level of athleticism. And Warner has more than a base level, but he has all these other things too that will allow him to become a really special player. And I was curious, from your perspective, you went to college with Fred Warner. How did he slip between the cracks? And when you were there, did the school and the coaching staff understand just how special he could be as a football player?
Well, in terms of slipping through the cracks, I think Fred Warner, everybody knew during his time at BYU that he was an extreme athlete. He was a really special player. However, his senior year was in 2017, and that just so happened to be the worst year in 50 years of BYU football. So BYU went 4-9 that year, and really in every aspect, they were just a bad team. And I think it really had an impact on Fred Warner and maybe the way he was viewed, and just overall, kind of as a new defensive coordinator took over at BYU. Maybe he wasn't used in the best way possible during his junior and senior seasons. Like you guys have seen at the 49ers, he's excellent in coverage, but he's also great at creating havoc. And I don't know if they maximize that potential during his final years at BYU. But
what I remember is they played him in the slot a lot. He was an outside linebacker in coverage a lot. And what's interesting about the way the Niners what their vision for him is they made him a middle linebacker, the big thumper in the middle of the defense. And not only that, he's the quarterback of the defense. He's the one who hears the calls. He's the one who relays them to the other players. So really, they increased his responsibility like tenfold from college.
You're exactly right. And during his senior season, I think BYU started to implement a scheme where they rushed 3 and dropped 8 a lot of the time. And
wow.
And like you said, at outside linebacker in a scheme where you're dropping 8, that's zone coverage a lot of the time. And it's really hard to put on display your ability to create havoc, to be, exactly. And to direct a defense. And I think being an outside linebacker at BYU, maybe was a good fit for BYU at that time, but I think it's clear now that middle linebacker is where Fred Warner fits best. He's very smart, like you said. He's able to lead the defense, understand the game plan, and also be great in coverage. And he's just a playmaker. He understands where the ball is going, and I think he's found a perfect home in San Francisco.
Well, I got to say, even though BYU may have misused him, his history playing zone coverage in that particular scheme, I think that's what got the Niners' attention, because they play a lot of zone coverage. As great as he is in coverage, it's the zone that he does so well. So I think that's how he caught the Niners' eye, and his experience in the slot covering wide receivers really has helped him. It's probably the hardest thing a linebacker would have to do during a game, and he can hold his own. So that experience at BYU served him well.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there are times when you go back and look at his film at BYU where he made plays almost identical to that interception that he made in the Super Bowl. So I think you're certainly right. His zone coverage instincts certainly have served him well in the NFL. And I don't even know, it's so hard with the benefit of hindsight to say that he should have moved to the inside or not at BYU. But BYU felt like that was the best spot he could play at the time. And he was great at BYU. And like I said, I think more than anything, the team's record hurt his profile in his senior season. But I think we can all agree Fred Warner is a great athlete. He's smart, and he fits just like a glove in that San Francisco 49er defense.
I find it interesting that he was under the radar because BYU was under the radar. And maybe if they'd had a better running back or a better quarterback, he would have been a first or second round pick just because he would have been on a higher profile team. So in a sense, the 49ers benefited from a down year at BYU.
And maybe you're right. And I mean, BYU fans probably don't like to hear that, but with the benefit of hindsight, I think we could say, Fred Warner might have slipped under the radar, being in his third year, the 70th best prospect in the NFL. That's a great number for a third-year player. And to get someone of that caliber in the third round is a steal. And if it so happened that BYU's team record impacted his draft slot, then all the best to the 49ers for being able to identify that and pick him in that round.
Well, I'm sure everyone at BYU is extremely proud of Fred. And from what I understand, you went to school with him and interacted with him a little bit. I've interacted with him in the locker room, and I find him to be a gentleman. Real quickly, for 49er fans out there, what's your impression of what Fred Warner's like as a guy?
Well, Fred Warner at BYU, he was extremely friendly to everybody around him. And I think he was he was just a locker room type of guy where everybody, he created a cohesive defensive unit. People really liked him. Extremely likable guy. Like I said, respectful to everybody. And I think just all around, he's a great person. And it's part of the reason why he's done so well in the NFL, because he doesn't have off-field distractions. He's got his life in order, everything's set up, and he's just working hard and kind of following his trajectory from BYU into the NFL.
Yeah, he's probably 24, 25, and he gives off the aura that he's older than I am, and I'm 32. So I totally understand he's got his whole life together. And it's funny, there's a lot of football players like that. They're a very mature group of people a lot of the time. Thank you so much for having me on. It was wonderful talking about Fred Warner.
Yeah, really appreciate your time, Grant. Best of luck to you, and best of luck during the upcoming season.
Same to you, Casey.